How's it going, YouTube? All right, so today we're out in the middle of the Adirondack Park in upstate New York, and I'm going to do a review and setup video on the Ozark Trail 10x12 cabin tent. All right, let's begin. All right, so the first thing I want to cover is transporting the tent. All right, so when you get the tent, it comes in this it's like a duffel bag with wheels on it. It'll work okay. It's a little flimsy, and I also think it's a little hard to pack the tent back in after you set it up. So what I did is I went to Dick's Sporting Goods and I got a jet sled, ice fishing sled. This sled is perfect. It fits the tent and my stove in the front of it. I also, just to reinforce the sled a little bit, I added some dowel rods underneath the lip down here, and I put some eye bolts in the side so I can weave some cordage through it so I can really scrunch down, forming a nice Archerout and making the whole setup easier to move through the woods. All right, so once we pick a good spot where we want to set the tent up, the next thing we got to do is do some site work. Now, the cool thing about the Archerout that I mentioned earlier is you can add all your tools. So I brought my Black Diamond snow shovel, I got my Silky handsaw, and I can add a couple things in there. So everything I need is in the sled, and I can bring a backpack separately. And all I got to do is unpack this, do all the work, and then I'm not making 50 trips back and forth to the vehicle. All right, so now that we have the site pretty much shoveled out, it's pretty good like this. I don't really need to worry too much about the snow. The bottom of the tent does have a waterproof layer or lining in it. I do want to get a bulk of it out though. You know, anything waterproof could still leak over time. I don't really want to wear it out. And I also don't want to be standing on a waterbed the whole time. All right, so I shoveled out the whole area. I went through and I picked up some big sticks, any rocks I found that I could move. And another thing is right now I'm on a little bit of a hill, so this is the low end. And I shoveled out a small little path right there. So if any water does melt, it has room to escape. All right, so getting into the actual tent now. So what I did was I got an old Army duffel bag, and I used that to store all the elbow brackets. So a couple things are included with it. You got, so I open this up. So you got all these elbow pieces for the top and top corners to support the tent. Next thing we got here is the floor liner. Now this is pretty heavy duty plastic or maybe a vinyl material. I've used this a few times. It Velcros right in, right around the edges. I've never had an issue with it. Really works great for keeping water out. Next thing we got here is the actual top of the tent. It's a little heavy, a little bulky, but it is good durable material. Being that this tent was only $250, I got it on sale. I was a little nervous about the quality of it, but honestly, it's a great tent, and I haven't had an issue with it. I've used it quite a few times, all right? And the last thing we have is all the poles, all right? So again, great thing about this jet sled, keep all the poles on the bottom, stack the tent in there, put the floor, put my duffel bag with the elbows, any tools I want to leave, like my shovel, my saw, and I got room to keep the stove right in the front. All right, it's really nice to have everything packed right in the sled. I can just drag this out, bring a backpack, anything else I want, and I'm not making a bunch of trips back and forth. Really works out great. So I just finished setting up the whole top part of the frame. This was super simple. As I mentioned earlier, the whole thing is color coded. So we got gray colored pieces or white that run up the center of the post, and then we have red does the outside and the center long ways. Now these posts just clip together. There's a small nipple that comes out right here, and they just pop together. There are multiple settings, so if the material is a little stretched out, you can stretch them out a little bit for the tent. Or if you it's cold outside and you want to put them together like it is today, then you can make the tent a little smaller. Now one thing to note, all these posts are pretty short, so they just go from the center to the bracket, and they just pop together. They have like a bungee string on the inside, so if you move this frame around too much, they could pop apart, but it's super easy just to stick them back together. The next thing I'm going to do is pull the top part of the tent out, and I'm going to place it over the frame. Now when I do this, I'm going to just do the top, and I'm going to put it in place. Then I'll be able to crawl underneath and set all the legs up, then propping up the tent. So at this point, the tent is just about complete. After I got the top on, I went around and I just added these Velcros to the post. They're in a few places throughout the tent. Pretty simple. And then the bottom of each post also has a pin on the tent portion that you need to pick up and slide underneath the bottom of the pole. So I went around and did that. Tent's just about done. The last thing I need to do is just put the floor inside of the tent. All right, so I just finished setting up the tent. I'll do a quick walk around of the whole thing. A couple things to point out. So this tent does come with a stove jack, so you can set a little stove up in there and keep warm at night. Super easy to use. This tent does have tie downs all the way around it. It's a little windy right now, but it's not supposed to get windy tonight, so I'm really not too worried about the wind. I chose not to tie it down this time. Quick little glance to the whole outside. So we do have these windows. There are 3 windows around the outside of the tent. We can unzip those, get a little more light inside. We also have some vent holes at the top. Keep some moisture out of the tent. It's huge. Nothing's worse than having the top of your tent covered with moisture that's raining down on you. Got my jet sled there loaded up with wood so I can stay warm tonight. And here's the inside. So got my little stove set up right there. This is not really the best stove I've ever used. I'm actually looking at getting a new one soon. The floor also doesn't line up perfectly with the stove, and the stove jack, it's kind of pressed against it a little bit, but I haven't had any problems so far. A few other things. This tent came with some storage bags, so you can store food, matches, any kind of small things like that. There's the 3 windows I talked about. Plenty of room in here. I'm out here by myself tonight, so I have my one cot set up and my cooler, and I brought a little foot locker with all my gear in it that I can use for a little table and holding up my stove and all my equipment. One thing to note about this floor is it is still a little snowy below, so it does make this floor a little slippery. It slips on the snow a little bit, but again, not really that big of a deal. Overall, really enjoy this tent. Really can't go wrong with purchasing one of these. I did add a few other things too, like up here we have these little solar panel lights. They just click on top. A bunch of different colors. They are made by M-Powered, sorry. The tent did come with some lighting. Just a little LED strip here that takes batteries, but I thought they were kind of cheap, so I went and looked and got something else. The outer screen here on the door is pretty cool. It's separate from the actual material on the outside, so if you want, you can have just the screen down, or you can roll them both up. All right, so overall, I think this is a great tent. There's tons of space in it. You can find them on sale. Typically, I believe they're around $450, $500. I got this one on sale around Christmas time for 250 bucks. You really can't beat that. Great tent if you're going to be out with a few people or by yourself in the wintertime. If you're going on any big hunting trips, biking trips, climbing, anything like that. Probably not ideal for, you know, carrying it long distance, but overall, I'd say it's a great tent. I definitely would recommend purchasing one. Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, like and subscribe. Thank you.